All right, here we go. This is live at lunch Wednesday, and so we're here. I'm Rev Bruce, and I'm here with Pastor John Powell Jr., and we welcome you to live at lunch today. And our whole thing right now is looking at undefiled, and that is the book of Daniel. We looked at part one last week. And we actually talked about Daniel and the Daniel plan, the Daniel diet. Some call it the Daniel fast. But we're talking about being undefiled, not allowing your convictions to be compromised. And so, hallelujah, we're glad to be here. How you doing today, Pastor?
Doing wonderful. Glad
All
to
right.
be here also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so, if you could, are there any takeaways you had from last week that you wanted to bring up now, or that you had thought of since we last met?
Uh, I guess the main thing I got from last week, and it spills over into this week, is being steadfast and unmovable. In other words, as one gentleman said when he was fighting uh, to homeschool his children, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, one of the justices asked him, um, what are you willing to do in order to keep your children out of public school? And he said, if you will guarantee me today that my children will never enter public school, you can execute me.
Mm.
I'm willing to die to keep my children out of public school. And the judge said, there are preferences and there are convictions.
Mm-hmm.
This man has a conviction, and he is the one that helped to establish the homeschool and private school industry, because the
Yeah.
public schools were going after them. So what I got out of last week is their preferences and their convictions.
Yeah. So some of us might prefer not to undergo certain things, and then some of us have convictions that we've vowed to uphold.
Right.
Pretty much, like when we talk about convictions, when we talk about like the Nazarites, you know, certain convictions that they have
Right.
they won't drink, they won't drink wine or any of the fruit of the vine, won't touch a carcass of a dead body or anything of that nature. And so, when you have a vow or oath like a Nazarite, as opposed to just saying, "Well, I don't eat fish," you know, or I don't eat pork. You know, that's different than having a conviction that you're holding to and seeking not to compromise. Yeah,
Right.
thank you for pointing that out. And so, before we move along with the show, just making sure we hit you up and let you know. Going into next year we're going to shift. Next year we're going to shift and do a full year of Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, and that's 52 chapters across 52 weeks. Week by week, we'll cover a chapter of Jeremiah, and take that from January through December, and I trust that people will explore and experience something they have not seen in its entirety before. The entire book of Jeremiah and that prophecy, and much like a lot of what we read, a lot of what we've talked about, you hear a lot of stuff said and preached in church, and you say, man, where does that come from? And then when you read it, and you read it in context, man, I know I can't count how many encouraging cards I've received where it said, I know the plans I have for you. But if I had read it in its context when I read it in Jeremiah, he's not talking to me. He's talking to the nation of Israel, you know. And so knowing that and being able to decipher that and coming back to it. Come on, join us on this journey. It'll be the Jeremiah journey. We'll do that week by week, and we'll start that the first week in January. We've got another lesson to continue in Daniel before that, but just want to let you know we'll do the Jeremiah journey, and we'll shift from 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time to 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time at that point. And to go along with that, there are 2 fundraisers going on. Definitely want to thank everybody who was able to tune in to the Coffee and Chat show that I do this past weekend. Miss Sharifa, the love sister of mine, dealing with her fight against cancer and what she's able to do with chocolate and chemo and the fundraiser she has going on with that. And then today, right now, Bayview Baptist Church here in San Diego, they're giving out food, y'all. So if you're in San Diego area, not even in San Diego proper, make your way down to Bayview before it all wraps up. But they're giving out food, and that's for Christmas holiday. So God bless. This is a mighty day in the Lord, and we are looking at the different things that are going on, and to go along with that, here's what we're talking about. We're talking about Daniel and the Lion's Den. All right, we're talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We're talking about Daniel refusing to compromise what he would eat. And so as we get into this in chapter 3, Pastor, can you read verses 1 through 6 for us?
Absolutely. I'm reading from the New King James. It says, Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, that's 90 feet, and its width was 6 cubits, that's 9 feet. He set it up in the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, languages, that at the time that you hear the sound of the horns, the flutes, the harps, the lyres, and the psalteries in symphony with all kinds of music, you should fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up.
All right. And so
verse 6, I didn't get that. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace.
Right. And so here we go. This is at a point in the Babylonian rule where Nebuchadnezzar has set this up, and the decree, the law of the land is fall down and worship the golden image, according to verse 5. And listen, the history of the children of Israel lays it out plain that there is no shyness when it comes to creating these golden images. You can ask Aaron, the brother of Moses, and he could break down for you that the children of Israel had no problem with coming up with a golden image when it came to the calf, where they put all their bracelets and jewelry together and got that thing shaped up when they told Aaron, come on, Moses is gone and God's probably taking him out and give us something to worship. You know what I mean? And so the children of Israel have a history of this thing. Oddly enough, this fascination with gold is mixed in there too, right? And now here are the Babylonians, saying, hey, when you hear the music, that's your cue, fall down and worship this image, and this was supposed to be across all the land and all the people, regardless of your language, regardless of your culture, regardless of your background. And so when you talk about it, right, those are things that God's people are, shedding light on, right? God's people are, living through, and they're dealing with it, and they're dealing with it while they're in captivity, right? And if we take it into another account, here they are, they're in captivity, and the certain group of people, those young men that we talked about in chapter 1, have been trained to stand before the king, to be able to serve in his palace. And that was 3 years of training that included initially a diet of the king's delicacies. But as we saw in chapter 1, Daniel and his request and refusal to compromise led to a change in that menu for those young men. And so as we move forward, Pastor, give me some indication here. You see where he says, if you don't do this, right?
Right.
There's a consequence, right? And so that consequence is to be cast into a burning, fiery furnace, right? And so give us a picture of what this threat meant to these people who were in captivity.
What this threat meant to them, the same type of threat would mean to us. And that is, there are only two sides of a line that you can come down on. And the first side of that line would be, well, we know it's not a real God. We're just going to go ahead and submit to it so we don't have to get killed. The other side says, I cannot do this because my God has commanded me not to. In those 10 commandments, he tells us that we are not to bow down to any graven image nor likeness of anything that is in the earth, in the heavens above, or even in the waters under the earth. You don't bow down to them. You don't serve them, for the Lord your God is a jealous God. And so I understand what Nebuchadnezzar was actually trying to do. He said, wow, I got all these different nations, all these different people under me. So the first thing he did was he took people from young boys from all those countries, brought them to Babylon, educated them for 3 years. Then he gave them the administrative positions over their own lands. So he felt that if he trained them in the ways of the Babylonians, and then they could communicate, this is how it's got to be to their people, he would have a more harmonious kingdom. But at some point, he came to the conclusion, because all these people worshiped different gods, that there needed to be a national religion, a state religion, that, okay, you can worship your God, but you still must worship the God that I've set up. And that is where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego drew the line in the sand. And that's what we're going to cover in these next few verses, of how they drew the line in the sand. And so we're going to stand for what we believe in.
Yeah, I see there also that there's they received the training, and as we look in the following verses, when it talks about the people of Babylon that were they had a problem with these Jews. They were hating on these Jews, and they said, these Jews that you've put over the affairs of the province of Babylon. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's beyond just them being someone that's actually people that are in a position to just operate. They are in a position to actually serve in a higher position within this province that we know as Babylon. And so when we do that, right, and we look at these three men, this one doesn't include Daniel in particular, but they were in a position of rank within the hierarchy of Babylonian rule, and so they were looked upon with some form of despisement. They were looked upon with some form of disdain. And like it says, at a certain time, some of these Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews, right? It says at a certain time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. They spoke to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery in symphony with all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up." And so they were calling them out and bringing it before the king.
Absolutely.
And so in this accusation that they bring forward, then the king is outraged, right? He's coming forward and he's, called them on it, right? And these young men are, are in a position to where they're before the king and they've got to answer as to how they are conducting themselves within his kingdom and based upon his latest decree. And as we said, and I know it sounds repetitive, but this decree says when the music goes on, you got to get to moving. This isn't like musical chairs or anything. This is a life and death thing. This is comply or die in the situation that these folks were in Babylon. And failure to comply meant that you were bound to die. And taking it a step further, it says he was outraged by what had happened, and when he brought them before the king, um, he asked him, "Was it true?" And what I thought was interesting was his last line. He says, "But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" Right?
Mm,
And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? Verse 15. And I thought this was interesting because of how he poses the structure of his inquiry, right? Because he doesn't give them a chance to immediately answer. It's a rundown of, are these accusations true? And don't you know that this is what you're supposed to do? And if you don't do it, this is what's going to go down. And when that goes down, who's going to save you from what I'm putting on you? And so, what does this say to you as an impression of what type of ruler Nebuchadnezzar was?
Nebuchadnezzar was an autocratic ruler. Whatever came out of his mouth became law. And in this particular situation, he was not aware of any kind of a God that could deliver anyone from his decrees. And what we have to look at is the history of the world at that time. And what we find is that almost every kingdom had their own gods. Egypt had its gods, and Samaria had its gods. Everybody had their own God that they worshiped. And if one country went out to conquer another country and they succeeded, it was thought that the reason that they succeeded was because their God was more powerful than the God that the people worship.
Mm-hmm.
So we find in Nebuchadnezzar's case, God tells Daniel that it is God that set up Nebuchadnezzar, and the succeeding kingdoms after him, God has a part in setting up those also, because God is moving the whole world in a certain direction to bring about the birth of his son. And certain things had to be in place at that time. So he's going to meet the God that is able to deliver out of his hands.
Amen. And I find it curious, as we talk about, I find it curious that um, that some of this as a how do you say some of this as it plays out is highly dramatic. It's highly dramatic. You know what I mean?
Right.
And in rereading this as as a chapter, a single chapter in this book, I found it to be, yes, an isolated incident, but I found it to be a highly intense incident. Where there was, if it was TV, it's enough drama to drip you along to cover the time and still have you on the edge of your seat. What's going to happen next? What's going to be the response next? And it's depicted in such a way to where our attention is grabbed, because when these men finally do answer, it says, "If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not," right?
There's the conviction right there.
But if not, Be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. There's that, like you said, that's the conviction, that's the linchpin. It's like he's able to do it. If you put us in there, he's able to do it. It's just a matter of, is it in his will?
Mm-hmm.
Is it in his will for us to survive and others to see it and know that God is a conqueror? Is it in his will for us to, suffer and others to see it and know that God hears our cries? Is it in his will? Is the in between the black and white that we see there, and I want to, kind of slip this in on the side and get your get your view on this. I've heard it preached many a times, right? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? And it's always, and I come from a Baptist background, you know what I mean, and I've always heard somebody come in and in the pulpit they've thrown it down as these three Hebrew boys, you know what I mean, them three, little Hebrew boys, and it's, I get it if we were still in chapter 1 and they were little young things still coming up and still being trained, but these, even the Bible refers to them as men.
Yeah.
And so I just want to check in with you, Pastor. Have you had similar encounters with the preaching of this text of them being the three Hebrew boys as opposed to men?
Almost all of my life, I've heard the theatrical way that these chapters have been preached.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they made it sound is that we're dealing with some kids under 17 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
And people forget they were brought in as teenagers, trained for 3 years. So let's say they were brought in at age 17, trained for 3 years. Now they're 21.
Mm-hmm.
And then we don't know how much time had passed since they were given their jobs of administration. And remember, they were given top positions because they came out so much smarter than the rest of them.
Yeah.
And now if we bring all of that up to today, have you seen it where when a person has some natural abilities, other people get jealous of them? I remember, if you saw the movie Hidden Figures, where this Caucasian lady was very much upset because these black women were so powerful in their mathematical skills. But they had trained for that. And so often we get jealous of people, but we are not willing to pay the price that they paid to be where they are. So,
yeah, I mean, you're looking at a text that has been preached, and as you said, theatrically, that has been, laid out there numerous times, across pulpit upon pulpit, to say that God is able, and if nothing else, trust and believe that God is able, much like these men did in this text. And so here it is. now that they've said this and they've shared this conviction, this is the part where I find the, how will we say this? I find a few of our people right here. How is this? How is this a demonstration of their faith, though? You know what I mean?
The main way that this is a demonstration of their faith is they knew the consequences of not bowing down and worshiping the golden statue was death. And they declared to the king that his decree did not matter to them. And they declared to the king in verse 17, if that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hands, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the golden image which you have set up. So out comes their conviction, and they're saying whatever consequence God delivers us or he doesn't deliver us, we're not going to bow down. And as I read the book of Revelation, which I just took my church through almost a year of the study of the book of Revelation, we find that the people who receive Christ during the tribulation will have a choice. And that is, if they don't worship the Antichrist, their heads will be chopped off. And so
some form of consequence. Yeah.
Yeah. So we even today are going to have to gird ourselves up and be prepared for whatever the world is going to throw at us as the church.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's okay. I'm gonna take a 1 minute detour right here. You know, because and thank you for taking your church through, the book of Revelation and truly giving them the full picture. I remember going to Lutheran school, and in Lutheran school, the idea is they may not get you running to heaven, but they sure will scare you to stay out of hell. You know what I mean? And it was the fact that the tracks, the very illustrative animated tracks that were used a lot of the time that we were given in Lutheran school, Revelation just was so gruesome and gory. These images and the heads chopped off and the mark of the beast and the apocalypse and what the pestilence looked like, and all this stuff was combined in these 8 to 12 pages of tracks that you said, well, if that's what it's about, give me Jesus now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing that when it comes back to conviction, I'm not really convicted if I'm believing only out of, well, this was the safer choice.
Mm-hmm.
This was the other option. You understand what I mean? And so just to help somebody out there, that's out of fear, not faith.
Right.
And so we have to be careful and understand what our beliefs, I won't even say faiths, what our beliefs are rooted in and ensuring that they are rooted in faith. And so keeping that in mind, understanding that here it is, they're saying comply or die. And these guys say, we're not going to do that.
Right.
We're not going to, hey, even if God doesn't deliver us out of your hands, we're not doing that.
But
We're not worshiping that image.
In a way, they were saying, we can be delivered out of your hands by God not allowing the fire to hurt us, or if it's in God's will, we'll be delivered out of your hands by the fire itself. See, people who truly believe that there is a life after death and that there is a heaven and a hell, as the Hebrew boys did, they were clinging to what they knew was in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your strength. So that's everything within you. And so they're saying, we're just not willing to compromise on that. And we're willing to pay the price. And that's what we all are going to have to develop, that kind of conviction, or we will fold. I can tell you of denominations, whole denominations, that have already folded to the whims of the world. In various ways, they have turned away from what God has commanded, and it's very sad.
Yeah, we're living in a generation that is comfortable, particularly in the United States, complacent. I have to be honest with you. The as much as people argue a religious right and these elitist evangelists and all this, those are small numbers. Those are small numbers,
right,
in the factor of political involvement. There are so many by the wayside churches that, as an old deacon used to say, they're just trying to keep the lights on. That they're not even getting into conflicts about who's in the White House and even their local politics. I'm not even encouraging their people to go out and vote. Just trying to keep it going from Sunday to Sunday. That's the majority of your small storefront churches across America, along with the churches that are periodically meeting, that are not meeting Sunday by Sunday. The ones that still have somebody on a circuit coming through there. And other than that, then Brother Elder or somebody else is delivering a message when the preacher isn't coming to town, and so we still have these out of balance ideas and notions of where the church is as a whole, and that's a wide expanse. You have mega churches where people are. There's something going on every day, and then you have churches where the building was empty and desolate, from Sunday to Wednesday, and from Wednesday until choir rehearsal, or something else might happen on a Saturday and Sunday. And so the issue with this age is the decay and dying and falling away of the church. You understand what I'm saying? It's the bride that is not awaiting the groom, but the bride that is betrothed but unfaithful, that it talks about. And when you talk about Revelations, you talk about God judging the churches, you talk about those things, and that gets back to the convictions. And so here we are, these men bound to their conviction. They say they're not going to go for it, And Nebuchadnezzar says, you know, you got the wrong one. And Nebuchadnezzar said, not only does he have this fiery furnace, but it says in verse 19, he ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And then it goes on to say, and he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. So listen, I want it as hot as it can get, right? And I want give me the strongest that we got to hold them in place when we put them in there, so they can't even shake loose and get away before we cast them into the furnace, right? And it goes on to say in verses 22 and 23, it says, because the king's order was urgent and the furnace overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So the fire hit them and consumed them, right? And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. So if we just took it from physics, right? They were held. Those who were holding them got consumed and taken in by the fire, and they themselves fell into the fire. We still there?
If anybody has ever been burned, you know that being cast into a fiery furnace, there's no escape. Yet God moved miraculously to show King Nebuchadnezzar that he was God and not anybody else.
Yeah, and this takes an odd turn, right? You know, as because we're talking about the furnace being lit. We're talking about, you know, it being 7 times as high, and then it being to where these mighty men are taken into the furnace themselves, right? And then what's really amazing, right? Like I said, it says they fell in there, right? And then it says beyond them falling in there, right? It says, then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? And they answered and said to the king, true, O king. He answered and said, but I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. Okay? So listen, they were bound and they fell in, right? And now he sees them unbound, walking around, and unhurt. And they got company. What you got to say to that, Reverend?
Well, we want to take a look at the results of the friends' steadfast faith in God's deliverance. The Lord delivered them. The king was stunned or astonished, as you have said. And then he asked the question, didn't we throw 3 men in? And I see a 4th man. And he was describing this 4th man as a divine being. In other words, there had to be something about the 4th man that was unnatural, that was beyond just being another man in the fire. And then he makes an acknowledgement. He says, He acknowledged that the men were servants of the Most High God. He tells them, come out. And when they came out, it says there was no smell of smoke on them. It was like they'd never been in a fire. And what that tells us, if we want to bring that up to our lives today, is that God can deliver us if he chooses to, and it is a part of his purpose.
Mhm.
But if he doesn't deliver us from a particular situation, it doesn't mean that he doesn't love us. What it means is that he has another plan for us. And, even if it costs us our life, look where we're going. We're going into the presence of the Lord. So we must get to a point where we truly believe that what the Bible says is the absolute truth, and we're going to stand on that, just like these three young men did.
Yeah, I'm impressed with another part of this that I'll just read from here. It simply says that he wasn't so much asking what was happening as much as he was like commanding them to come out.
Mm-hmm.
If listen, if you were bound and now you're unbound, if you were fallen and now you're walking around upright, if you should have been consumed by the fire and now you're walking around unhurt, right? Not consumed by the fire, not fighting off flames, then come on out here, right? And so he calls on them to come out and come here, and he calls them servants of the God Most High, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their bodies where the fire had no power, right? And the hair of their heads had not been singed, nor were their garments affected, and the smell of fire was not on them.
Right.
Right? Anybody that's I mean, if you try to rescue a kitten out of a fire, and the fire was across the house, you would still be susceptible to smoke inhalation and your clothes, and you would smell of smoke and ash.
Mm-hmm.
From the fire. If you're in a I used to live in Lake Elsinore, and I remember when the fires were going on in the forest just north of us, and coming out of between Orange County and Riverside County, right there, and the smoke was filling the air so much that even when you got into your car that had been closed up, it still smelled like smoke. And so in normal terms, just being near it is
Mm-hmm.
enough to smell like it. But here were some folks that were in it and didn't even smell like they had been around it.
Here's some interesting things. Um, the king actually submits to God. He praised the God of the three Hebrew men
Yeah.
because God's angel had saved them. And then he praised them because they had courageously trusted and refused to betray their God,
Mm-hmm.
because they had defied the king and were willing to die for their God. So this incident protects the God of Israel from that time on. He issued a special decree prohibiting anyone from speaking against the God of the three Hebrew men.
Mm-hmm.
If any person did, he was to be executed and all of his property destroyed. And then he promoted the three friends of Daniel. And so what we see here is what the devil meant for evil, God can still turn it around for good, for those who love him and keep his commandments.
Yeah, it was a flip.
Absolutely.
You know, this reversal from, hey, I've got this image and we're going to play this music and you need to bow down, to, well, wait a minute. Nobody in my lands, will be able to even speak against this God. This isn't something that happens at a certain time. This isn't something that requires a signal. This is like, it better not ever come out of your mouth.
Right.
And if it does, you're going to be torn limb from limb, and your house is going to be wiped out. You ever see the Grapes of Wrath, when they used to when the Jodes are trying to protect their home, and that man takes that tractor and just wipes their house out from end to end. It's like that. Your house will be laid in ruins, right? Where them four walls will just fold up and fall on top of each other. It's that type of destruction. And he goes on and is quoted as saying, "For there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way."
Right.
He didn't ask how he did it. He didn't ask why he did it, but he knew that only he could do it.
Absolutely.
And in the end, it's almost thrown out there like a caveat. After everything's said and done, he promotes the three men
even higher.
After everything that was brought against him, after them saying, "I'm not going to follow the rules," even after all that, he promotes the three men. And so as we take a look at this, and like I said, it's a turnaround. But how much can holding on to your convictions lead to your promotion? By you not caving in, how much of that can lead to your promotion and others seeing God on display in your life? What do you think about that, Reverend?
I think that God has done this many times, and we have not noticed the hand of God in it. And I can give you an example. I have a brother-in-law, and he was working for a particular company, and they were producing specific electronic panels. And these panels, normally a person could produce 5 in a day. He started working, and after about a month and a half, he had double the output. The supervisor had decided he would find out everything about how he did this, and then he was going to fire him, take credit for the change, and then teach all the other people how to do it. But as God would have it, he had one of the managers notice that. And so he came down and also talked to my brother-in-law. So when this supervisor tried to get rid of my brother-in-law, the manager knew what was going on, and he moved him into another department. He couldn't get rid of him because he was the son of his boss.
Mm-hmm.
But he moved him. And then he had my brother-in-law train everybody in that department on all 3 shifts. They gave him a huge bonus because what he had done was double the output, which meant it cost them half as much to produce the product. And my brother-in-law, being a Christian, knew that that was the hand of God watching over and protecting him. But a lot of people might have thought, oh, I was just lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, God moves in a number of situations where people think it was luck when it was the hand of God.
That's right. You know, we are admonished and implored to give thanks unto the Lord, for He is good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, we're admonished and told to do that. You know, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. You know, and all these declarations and proclamations that are made in the Psalms. A lot of times we use as the rallying cry, the call to worship, uh, to stir up and ignite praise and worship. And one of the things that's always coming back to is God's preserving presence. You know that he could have looked the other way. He could have turned a blind eye. He could have said, no. I remember what you was talking about upside of your neck yesterday. I'll catch up with you when you're ready to catch up with me. You know, but God doesn't take that stance. That God is, as it says, a very present help, and to take that into account when there is no temple service going on, when there is no psalter calling out. I was glad when they said unto me, "Let us go into the house of the Lord." You understand what I mean? When you have to put into practice whatever Mama and Daddy and the Rabbi was able to get in before the Babylonians invaded, these young men definitely held on to what little they had, which was a lot, and how much they're able to hold on. You know, and that pivots us to next week. Next week, we're looking at Daniel in the lion's den. Another incident of being undefiled, another incident of refusing to compromise, another incident where here is this man in a position with influence and power. Others are not feeling it and are seeking to see if they can get him tripped up. And so we see what happened today. And I want to help somebody out. You know, somebody may want to figure this out on their own too. But it doesn't say in the end that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got promoted and then they got back and clapped back at their accusers. It doesn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say that once they got in position, they had their accusers arrested and beheaded, or it doesn't even say the king did that. It just says that they were promoted. And God bless. I wonder how many of us could hold our convictions, you know, hold on to those convictions and still come out of it unharmed, unscathed, promoted, and not looking for payback.
Absolutely.
And so this is a curveball for any Christian brother or sister listening right now. This is the curveball for you. I'm telling you how I'm pitching it. This is the curveball. When you come out of whatever you need to come out of, when God's delivered you and brought you through it and brought you to a place where now your feet are settled on solid ground. Um, don't look around for those like they did Joseph, for those that threw you in the pit. Look
Mm-hmm.
at how far he's brought you into this promotion. Don't look around and try to figure out those who turned their back on you and made a mockery of you. Don't do that. Look and see what God's grace and mercy got you through and where he has you now. Because if he has you there now, he might be positioning you for something further in the future, but don't neglect it by chasing down something from your past.
Amen.
And so as we wrap up, Reverend, like I said, we're going to be looking at Daniel chapter 6 next week, Daniel in the Lion's Den. Another idea, another image, another incident of accusation, false charges, fake news for that matter, whatever you want to say. And it is, in a sense, Daniel saying, well, yeah, I'm not going to change just because you've changed things up. And that whole power of conviction. So as we turn and move towards that, anything else you want to share today, Pastor?
Um, I just want to say that we as Christians must be as vigilant as the three Hebrew men were and Daniel in our convictions. If you notice, Satan seems to always try to attack us at the point of our faith. And so here we see the three young men. They were attacked at the point of their faith, and they demonstrated that their faith was a true faith. And Daniel also uh, demonstrated. He could have closed, he opened his windows and faced Jerusalem, and he prayed every day at a specific time. Now, he could have closed those blinds and prayed, and they would not have been able to go to the king. But Daniel said, I'm going to do what I've always done, and come what may, I will serve my God. And that's the attitude we are all going to have as we move into the future.
Mm. Yeah, I think about that, and I think about it, and I don't want to give away too much
Mm-hmm.
from next week, but you know, there are churches in hiding. You go to China, they can't be walking around with a Bible up under their arms and all this other stuff in the midst of that government, and so there are people worshiping in hiding, and so since we have this among one of our many freedoms, let's not hide it. Have enough conviction to not hide your faith in these times. Have enough conviction to stand firm on your faith in these times. Have enough conviction. Listen, I know people put people put their eating style as part of the tags on their Twitter handles and other things. Healthy vegan and all this other stuff and a fit vegan and lovely vegetarian and all this other stuff. Is there a Christian attached to that? Is there faith attached to that? Is there man of God or a woman after God's own heart? Is there anything in your faith that you've been hiding? Let it out a little bit, a little bit more for others to see, because your faith should be a glowing light to somebody for them to come in and embrace God. And so I want you to think about that, and I appreciate that, Pastor, you sharing. But let your light shine. Let your light shine, and definitely come on out and and don't hide it. That is going to be one of the premier things that we look at as we continue in the faith. This is a time where God's people are, we don't have to be put on blast, right? But we need to be reminded that God has something for us. I got one more thing, and then I'm done. I'm going to put this in the chat here. I'll add it to the description for the video later on. But I'm actually doing a email course for some folks. I'm doing it with MailChimp, and this is MailChimp. For some of y'all that don't know, this is a service, for campaigns, for contacting people, what they call email marketing. And within that, we actually and definitely need to do better as a Christian community. But with MailChimp, one of the things, and it's a free service, one of the things we're able to do as you go further into services, that you're able to do email campaigns. And one of the email campaigns I'm doing is a email course. It's a free course. It's a short course, and this course is on chasing your dreams. Discovering your dreams. And so sign up. Sign up for the course. It's free, and it is definitely one of the things that I'm using to bring into the new year. As you know, Pastor, the whole thing with Daniel got me on the Daniel fast. This is my last day of the detox, and so praise God for that. I'll deck the halls with boughs of holly after today, and fa la 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 la. But it's taught me a lot about faith and moving forward, and what power we actually have, and how much power we give over to stuff that shouldn't have power over us. Sugar, chocolate, all these other things. You know what I mean? It's just amazing. And then still things that I need to give up. But in that, know that God is, he'll reach you where he needs to reach you and how he needs to reach you. And thank God for this experience. And I'll be doing it again. Like I said, it's this e-course, that I shared, right? It's simple. It's going to be via MailChimp, a 5-day e-course. We'll launch it right after Christmas. We'll start, that Monday following Christmas, and we'll take it on for 5 days. The emails are coming in succession. The plan is laid out. The goal is for you to discover your dream and do what you need to do to make your dream happen. All right. So God be with you. We will be back next week with Daniel chapter 6. And have a blessed day.
God bless. And have a Merry Christmas.